Srimad Bhagavad Gita Bhaashya of Sri Shaankara with the text and English translation by Swami Gambhiranandji Maharaj. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Introduction. The scene of the delivery of the Bhagavad Gita, the song divine, also known briefly as the Gita by Sri Krishna to Arjuna, is laid on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, where the Pandavas and the Kauravas had assembled their armies for war. Scholars differ as regards the date of this battle, though they are inclined to think that it was a historical event. According to tradition, the battle was fought at the end of the Dwapara Yuga. The next Yuga, namely the Kali Yuga, is believed to have started on 18th February 3102 BC, when Parikshit, grandson of Arjuna, ascended the throne of the Kauravas at Hastinapura. Karandikar says that the battle was fought in 1931 BC, while Professor Sengupta argues that it was fought in 2566 BC. C.V. Vaidya holds that the war was fought in 3102 BC. As Dhritarashtra was born blind, he could not rule the kingdom. So his younger brother Pandu became the ruler. When Pandu died, his sons were too young, as also were Duryodhana, the eldest son of Dhritarashtra, and his younger brothers. Hence, Bhishma, the oldest member of the family, managed the affairs of the state. When the young boys came of age, Duryodhana wanted to become the king by ousting Yudhishthira through foul means. But public opinion was in favor of Yudhishthira. So, in order not to antagonize the officials and the people, Bhishma advised Dhritarashtra to divide the kingdom between his sons, referred to as the Kauravas, and Pandu's sons, called the Pandavas. This advice was followed. Accordingly, the former ruled from Hastinapura and the later from Indraprastha for 36 years. But Duryodhana was jealous of the prosperity of the Pandavas, and to ruin them, he invited Yudhishthira to a game of dice, which resulted in the banishment of the Pandavas under the condition of living in the forest for 12 years and 1 year incognito. After the stipulated period, Yudhishthira claimed his portion of the kingdom, but Duryodhana refused, and this led to the battle of Kurukshetra. Yudhishthira had 4 brothers, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, and Sahadeva. Arjuna was considered the mightiest among the contemporary warriors. Sri Krishna, though himself a formidable warrior and regarded as an incarnation of Bhagavan, vowed not to take up arms on either side, but agreed to become the charioteer of Arjuna. Through the political sagacity and able advice of Sri Krishna, the result of the battle went in favor of Yudhishthira, who ascended the throne. The battle is described in all its details in the great epic Mahabharata, and the Gita, which forms chapters 23 to 40 of the Bhishma Parva of this epic, must be as old. Radha Krishnan points out that the Mahabharata contains references to the Gita. Scholars are at variance about the date of this voluminous epic. They ascribe to it a date much later than that of the battle, and opine that it underwent many additions and alterations in subsequent ages. According to them, Gita also suffered the same fate. R.C. Datta thinks that the Mahabharata was first written in the 12th century BC. Bhullar and Christie, in their book Contributions to the study of the Mahabharata, assigned the present form of the epic to the 3rd century AD. But according to Radhakrishnan, the epic took its present form at least in the 5th century BC, whereas it might have been first written in the 11th century BC. Some of the Western thinkers were of the opinion that the Gita was written after Jesus Christ and the idea of devotion was borrowed from him. But the Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics remarks it is now certain that portions of this poem in which the doctrine of bhakti or fervent faith is taught are pre-Christian and therefore itself is of indigenous Indian origin. Not merely the devotional portions, but the book as a whole is not only pre-Christian, it is pre-Buddhistic as well. That the Gita is pre-Buddhistic follows from the fact that it does not refer to Buddhism. Some scholars believe that the mention of nirvana 6 times in the Gita is a clear indication of its post-Buddhistic origin. But the word nirvana in the Gita occurs compounded either with Brahma as Brahma Nirvana, meaning identified with or absorbed in Brahman, or with Paramam as Nirvana Paramam, which means culminating in liberation. The Buddhistic Nirvana, on the other hand, is used in the sense of being blown out or extinguished. This word also occurs elsewhere in the Mahabharata in the sense of extinction. So the conclusion is that the Buddhists borrowed the word nirvana from the earlier Hindu literature. Furthermore, the construction of many sentences as also archaic forms of words in the Gita does not follow the grammatical rules of Panini, that is 6th century BC. Besides, the word yoga is used in the Gita in a much wider sense than it is in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, who followed Panini 100 or 150 years later. Telang is of the opinion that the Gita was written earlier than 300 BC, while R.J. Bhandarkar holds that it must have been written earlier than the 4th century Vaishnavism and Shaivism, etc. Radhakrishnan, however, goes further backward to 5th century BC according to Dr. Das Gupta. It must have been composed earlier than Buddha's advent, etc. You have many things here. Among the Mundaka Upanishad, all the things are there. Okay, the time is immaterial. Okay, though as suggested by some scholars, Krishna of the Rigveda, who lived on the banks of Amshumati or Yamuna, and fought against Indra, might have been a tribal Bhagwan. The Krishna of the Mahabharata, otherwise known as Vasudeva, son of Vasudeva and Devaki, must have been a historical person honored as an incarnation of Vishnu or Narayana. Megasthenes, 320 BC, the Greek ambassador to the court of Chandragupta, mentions that Heracles was worshipped by Surasenas, in whose land were 2 great cities, Mathura and Klesobora, Krishnapura. Scholars identify Heracles, Harikulesha, with Krishna. The Kaushitaki Brahmana refers to him as a descendant of Angirasa, and the Chandogya Upanishad says that Krishna, son of Devaki, was taught by Ghora Angirasa. Some scholars find a similarity between the teaching of Krishna with Ghora's teaching. Then these that are austerity, charity, straightforwardness, non-injury, and truthfulness are the payments made to the priests. Chandogya Upanishad. Besides the Ghora, all these things are there, many things. According to the recension of Gita commented on by Shankaracharya, the number of verses is 700, but there is evidence to show that some old manuscripts had 745 verses. The Gita published in Srinagar, Kashmir, with the annotation of Abhinav Gupta Acharya contains the same number of verses. Other manuscripts have been discovered with various variations, both in the number of verses and the readings. Shankaracharya's testimony for the text of the Bhagavad Gita is earlier than that of any other MS. or commentator. Okay. Shankaracharya wrote his commentary. The Gita has taken a definite form with 700 verses so far, at least as the general public is concerned. Gita is ranked among the greatest religious books of the world, and in India it occupies a position next only to the Upanishads. In fact, it is considered as a summing up of the Upanishads. In certain places, it quotes from them amongst almost verbatim. There is a commonly known verse which says all the Upanishads are cows. The milker is Sri Krishna, the calf is Arjuna, the enjoyers are the wise ones, and the milk is the fine nectar that the Gita is. Sarvopanishado gavo dogdha gopalanandana partho vatsa sudhir bhokta dugdham Geetamrutam mahat. The book has been translated into all the widely spoken languages in India as also into the principal languages of the world. As early as the time of Akbar, the book was translated into Persian separately by Abul Fazl and Faizi. About the Bhagavad Gita, the Encyclopedia Britannica writes, the influence of the Bhagavad Gita has been profound. It was a popular text open to all who would listen and fundamental for all later Hinduism. So all these things you have in the introductory part. Okay. So in the preparation of this book, we have been helped by Swami's Gambhirananda and Atma Ramananda ji. In general, we have followed the Gita Press Gorakhpur edition of the text and the commentary. Important variations in reading have been pointed out in the footnotes. Okay. Next, this is the introductory part. Next, we have Bhagavad Gita proper invocation and introduction. That is Avataranика Bhaashya of Shaankara. Om Narayanah Paro Vyakta Dandam Sambhavam Andasyantastvime Lokaha Saptadvipacha Medini. Om Narayana is higher than the unmanifest. Avyakta. The cosmic egg comes out of the unmanifest. All these words, including the earth with its 7 islands, are in the egg. After projecting this world, Sa Bhagavan Srishtvedam Jagat Tasya Cha Sthitin Chikirshuhu Marichadin Agre Srishtva Prajapatin Pravurti Lakshanam Dharmam Grahayamasa Vedoktam. After projecting this world and desiring to ensure its stability, he, the Bhagavan, first created the Prajapatis, namely Marichi and others, and made them follow the dharma, virtuous path, characterized by action, rights and duties, as revealed in the Vedas. Tataha anyancha sanaka sanandanadin utpadya nivritti lakshanam dharmam jnana vairagya lakshanam grahayamasa. And then, having created others, namely Sanaka, Sanandana, etc., he made them espouse the dharma characterized by renunciation and distinguished by knowledge and detachment. Dvividho hi vedokto dharmaha pravurti lakshano nivritti lakshanascha. For the dharma revealed in the Vedas is of two kinds. One characterized by action and the other by renunciation. जगतः स्थिति कारणं प्राणिनां साक्षात् अभ्युदय निश्रेयस हेतुः यः सः धर्मः ब्राह्मणाद्यैः वर्णिभिः आश्रमिभिश्च श्रेयोर्तिभिः अनुष्ठीयमानः. That dharma which is meant for the stability of the world and is the direct means to both secular and spiritual welfare of living beings continues to be followed by brahmanas and others belonging to different castes and stages of life who aspire after the highest. दीर्घेण कालेन अनुष्ठातॄणां कामोद्भवात् हीयमान विवेक विज्ञान हेतुकेन अधर्मेण अभिभूयमाने धर्मे प्रवर्धमाने च अधर्मे जगतः स्थितिं परिपिपालयिषुः सः आदिकर्ता नारायणाख्यो विष्णुः भौमस्य ब्रह्मणः ब्राह्मणत्वस्य रक्षणार्थं देवक्यां वसुदेवात् अंशेन कृष्णः किल सम्बभूव. When after a long time dharma became overpowered by adharma, vice versa, and that's vice, adharma vice, and not vice versa, and adharma increased owing to the deterioration of discriminative knowledge caused by the rise of desire in the minds of the followers of this dharma. Then, as tradition goes, Vishnu, called Narayana, the prime mover, took birth as a part of himself as Krishna, the son of Devaki, by Vasudeva, for the protection of Brahminhood, which is Brahman manifest on earth, and for ensuring the stability of the world. Because when Brahminhood is preserved, the Vedic Dharma becomes well guarded, for the distinctions among castes and stages of life depend on it. ब्राह्मणत्वस्य हि रक्षणेन रक्षितः स्यात् वैदिको धर्मः तदधीनत्वाद् वर्णाश्रमभेदानां. स च भगवान् ज्ञानैश्वर्यशक्तिबलवीर्यतेजोभिः सदा सम्पन्नः त्रिगुणात्मिकां वैष्णवीं स्वां मायां मूलप्रकृतिं वशीकृत्य अजो अव्ययो भूतानाम् ईश्वरो नित्यशुद्धबुद्धमुक्तस्वभावः अपि सन् स्वमायया देहवान् इव जात इव च लोकानुग्रहं कुर्वन्निव लक्ष्यते. And he, the Bhagavan, ever endowed with knowledge, sovereignty, power, strength, valor, and formidability, exercises his command over his own Maya, which naturally belongs to him as Vishnu, and which goes by the name primal nature, consisting of its three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, and as such, through his own Maya, he appears as if embodied, as if born, and as if favoring people, though by his nature he is birthless, changeless, the Bhagavan of all creatures, eternal, pure, conscious, and free. स्वप्रयोजनाभावे अपि भूतानुजिघृक्षया वैदिकं हि धर्मद्वयम् अर्जुनाय शोकमोहमहोदधौ निमग्नाय उपदिदेश गुणाधिकैः हि गृहीतः अनुष्ठीयमानः च धर्मः प्रचयं गमिष्यति इति. Although he had no need for himself, still, for the sake of favoring the creatures, he imparted that very twofold Vedic Dharma to Arjuna, who had sunk into the sea of sorrow and delusion, with the idea that the Dharma would surely propagate if it is accepted and put into practice by people who are endowed with an abundance of good qualities. धर्मं भगवता यथोपदिष्टं वेदव्यासः सर्वज्ञो भगवान् गीताख्यैः सप्तभिश्लोकशतैरुपनिबबन्ध तदिदं गीताशास्त्रं समस्तवेदार्थसारसंग्रहभूतं दुर्विज्ञेयार्थम्. Vedavyasa, who was omniscient and possessed of godly qualities, set forth in 700 verses under the name Geeta that dharma, as it was instructed by the Bhagavan. This scripture called Geeta, which is the collection of the quintessence of all the teachings of the Vedas, and its meaning is difficult to understand. तदर्थाविष्करणाय अनेकैः विवृतपदपदार्थवाक्यार्थान् अर्थन्यायम् अपि अत्यन्तविरुद्धानेकार्थत्वेन लौकिकैः गृह्यमाणम् उपलभ्य अहं विवेकतः अर्थनिर्धारणार्थं संक्षेपतो विवरणं करिष्यामि. So, finding that although its meaning of sentences and arguments, this scripture called the Geeta, which is is a collection of the quintessence of all the teachings of Vedas and its meanings, is difficult to understand. Finding that although its meaning of sentences and arguments have been expounded by many for the sake of discovering its import, Still, because of the multiplicity and extreme contradictoriness of the expositions, it is not comprehended by people. I shall explain it briefly with a view to determining its meaning distinctly. तस्य अस्य गीताशास्त्रस्य संक्षेपतः प्रयोजनं परं निःश्रेयसं सहेतुकस्य संसारस्य अत्यन्तोपरमलक्षणं तच्च सर्वकर्म संन्यासपूर्वकात् आत्मज्ञाननिष्ठारूपात् धर्मात् भवति. Of that scripture is the Geeta, which is such. The highest purpose, stated briefly, is liberation, characterized by the complete cessation of transmigration together with its causes, and that results from the dharma, virtuous path, consisting in steady adherence to knowledge of the self, preceded by renunciation of all rights and duties. Thus, having in mind this very dharma, virtuous path, to be the purport of the Gita, it has been said by the Bhagavan himself in the Anugita that very virtuous path is quite adequate for the realization of the state of Brahman. तथा इमं एव गीतार्थ धर्मम् उद्दिश्य भगवता एव उक्तं स हि धर्मः सुपर्याप्तो ब्रह्मणः पदवेदने इति अनुगीतासु. स हि धर्मः सुपर्याप्तो ब्रह्मणः पदवेदने इति अनुगीतासु. किंच अन्यदपि तत्रैव उक्तं नैव धर्मी न चाधर्मी न चैव हि शुभाशुभे यस्यादेकासने लीनस्तूष्णीं किञ्चिदचिन्तयन् ज्ञानं संन्यासलक्षणम् इति च. Moreover, there itself it has been further said, one who is neither a follower of virtue nor even of vice, and indeed not even engaged in good and bad. He who remains absorbed in the same posture, silent and without thinking of anything. It has also been said, knowledge is distinguished by renunciation. Here in the Gita as well, at the end it has been said to Arjuna, abandoning all forms of rights and duties, take refuge in me alone. इह अपि च अन्ते उक्तम् अर्जुनाय सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज इति. अभ्युदयार्थः अपि यः प्रवृत्तिलक्षणो धर्मो वर्णाश्रमान् च उद्दिश्य विहितः सः देवादिस्थान प्राप्तिहेतुः अपि सन् ईश्वरार्पण बुद्ध्या अनुष्ठीयमानः सत्त्वशुद्धये भवति फलाभिसन्धिवर्जितः. That dharma, characterized by action and enjoined for different castes and stages of life. Even though it is meant for achieving prosperity and attaining heaven, etc., yet when performed with the attitude of dedication to Bhagavan and without hankering for selfish results, leading to the purification of the internal organ, that is the antakarana, internal sense or mind. And in the case of a person with a purified internal antakarana or internal sense, it becomes the cause even of final liberation by becoming the means for the attainment of fitness for steady adherence to knowledge, jnana nishtha, and the cause of rise of knowledge. Thus also, having this very meaning in view, the Bhagavan will say, dedicating actions, rights and duties to Brahman, Bhagavan, giving up attachment, the yogis undertake work, rights and duties for the purification of oneself, of their hearts. अभ्युदयार्थः अपि यः प्रवृत्तिलक्षणो धर्मो वर्णाश्रमान् च उद्दिश्य विहितः सः देवादिस्थानप्राप्तिहेतुः अपि सन् ईश्वरार्पण बुद्ध्या अनुष्ठीयमानः सत्त्वशुद्धये भवति फलाभिसन्धिवर्जितः. शुद्धसत्त्वस्य च ज्ञाननिष्ठा योग्यता प्राप्तिद्वारेण ज्ञानोत्पत्तिहेतुत्वेन च निःश्रेयसहेतुत्वमपि प्रतिपद्यते. तथा च इमम् एव अर्थम् अभिसन्धाय वक्ष्यति ब्रह्मण्याधाय कर्माणि योगिनः कर्म कुर्वन्ति सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा आत्मशुद्धये इति। इमं द्विप्रकारं धर्मं निःशेषप्रयोजनं परमार्थतत्त्वं च वासुदेवाख्यं परब्रह्म अभिधेयभूतं विशेषतः अभिव्यञ्जयत् विशिष्टप्रयोजनसम्बन्धाभिधेयवत् गीताशास्त्रं यतः तदर्थे विज्ञाते समस्तपुरुषार्थसिद्धिः अतः तद्विवरणे यत्नः क्रियते मया इति अवतरणिका भाष्यम्। This scripture is the Geeta, while particularly revealing the twofold dharma having liberation as its own as its goal and the supreme reality, Brahman called Vasudeva as its subject matter comes to have a special purpose, prayojana, relationship, sambandha, and subject matter, vishaya. Since from a clear knowledge of its purport, all the human ends become fulfilled. Therefore, an effort is being made by me to expound it. So, it's a custom among the Sanskrit writers to start their works auspiciously by invoking, saluting, or praying to their chosen deities for the unhindered completion of their compositions. Pursuant to this tradition, Shankaracharya quotes a verse from a Smriti. Thereby, he indirectly admits that Smriti, like the Vishnu Purana, Bhagavad Gita, etc., as well as histories like the Mahabharata, are valid sources of spiritual knowledge. The name Narayana is derived by the combination of two words, Nara and Ayana, of which the former means those that are associated with Nara, and the later means their goal. Nara refers to all the bodies, both moving and non-moving, and Nara stands for the individual Atman, Nara. The reflections of the supreme consciousness which remain in association with those bodies, being the substratum of Atman, their ordiner and inner controller, the supreme being or supreme consciousness is called Narayana. From the phenomenal point of view, the supreme being Brahman is called Bhagavan, who is associated with Maya and possessed of omnipotence, omnipresence, and omniscience. The unmanifest stands for Maya, which is referred to in the Gita as Akshara, the immutable. So, by saying Narayana is higher than the unmanifest, the text means that Narayana is none other than the transcendental Brahman. The egg refers to the principle of Hiranyagarbha, whose body is constituted by the five elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, and space, in their subtlest forms that emerge from the unmanifest. All these words and so on refer to the body of Virat, which is made up of the five elements in their gross compounded forms. Traditionally, the commentators on scriptures clearly state their Anubandha Chatushtaya, four unifying factors: Adhikari, eligible person; Vishaya, subject matter; Sambandha, relationship between the eligible person and the subject matter; and Prayojana, purpose. But where this has not been done, the annotator has to point them out. Thus, according to AG, the subject matter here is the identity of the individual Atman, with the transcendental Brahman referred to by the word Narayana. The individual Atman hankering for liberation are the persons eligible to pursue this subject. The relationship is that existing between this subject matter and the eligible persons. The relationship can be of other kinds as well, like that between ends and means. The purpose is implied by the words higher than the unmanifest, which by figure of speech indicates that an eligible person goes beyond Maya through the knowledge of the transcendental Brahman. Prajapati literally means the master, Bhagavan, or progenitor of creatures. Virat is sometimes referred to as Prajapati. The Puranas also state that from Virat issued Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Brahma is also called Prajapati. From him issued Marichi, Daksha, Manu, and others, who too are called Prajapatis. Each of them rule over the world for certain fixed periods called Manvantaras, 4 crore or 4,320,000,000 human years. or 4,320,000 human years. It has been stated that the primary subject matter of Gita is the Bhagavan himself. The secondary subject matter consists of the path of renunciation and the path of activity as revealed in the Vedas. The four castes are Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, and the persons in the four stages of life are celibates, householders, those who repair to the forests, that is, leave home, anchorites, and mendicants. That is, in his form, created according to his will with the help of his power called Maya. Okay. Next, since Bhagavan is ever in possession of the six qualities, knowledge, etc., therefore, even as an incarnation, he remains unsurpassable. Eternal means devoid of transformations. Pure means devoid of a cause. Conscious means not inert. Free means free from ignorance, desire, and action. Krishna Dvaipayana, Vyasa is also called as. There is a Smriti text. No Krishna Dvaipayana, that is Vyasa, as the Bhagavan Narayana, which shows that Vyasa was an incarnation of Vishnu. Vyasam was Vyasaya Vishnu Rupaya, Vyasa Rupaya Vishnave. A Sanskrit verse defines Bhagavan thus: he is spoken of as Bhagavan, who is aware of creation and dissolution. Utpattim pralayam chaiva bhutanam agatim gatim vetti vidyam avidyancha savacho Bhagavan iti Vishnu Purana. Future, prosperity, and adversity, ignorance and illumination, everything of all beings. Words, separation of each word from the others. Meanings of words means, that's padacheda. Next, meanings of word. Determining the meanings by expounding the compound words. Then arguments, meeting objections and stating one's own conclusions. Nyaya, tarka. So these are the things we have explained here. Relationship between liberation, karmanistha, adherence to rights and duties, and jnananistha, steadfastness in knowledge, leading to the former. That's the thing. So next we will enter chapter 1, the melancholy of Arjuna Vishada Yoga, in the next session. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Sadguru Charanarpitam, Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavantu, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, Sajjana Santu Nirbhayaha, Om Tat Sat. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu, Shankara Arpitam, Sadguru Charanarpitam.